Welcome back to Beyond the Limelight. My name's Vince, owner of Master Effects, here with Ryan Burkett, our marketing director.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
So we're in a little different setting today, not as haunted attraction, not as spooky. We're with Carl Rupsis, Auditorium Technical Director of Valley View School District. We're switching gears now with Beyond the Limelight to kind of show you and showcase some of the other behind-the-scenes elements of the entertainment industry. We go way back.
Yeah, I think 11 years, 12 years.
11 to 12 years ago. So I went to high school at Bolingbrook High School in Illinois, part of Valley View School District.
Yep.
And I met Carl through basically playing drums for the musicals.
Yeah, it was for the musical. I was brought in at that point, was just doing sound design for the musical. I got brought in, I think, 2 or 3 years before that because it was, I guess, not very good. So I got brought in after opening night for one show, and then the next year they brought me in, and actually we started from scratch and brought in a PA and the whole 9 yards. But yeah, you were actually one of the first people I remember, student-wise, just because we built a drum room for you, and you were the first person to get shoved into the drum room, which is now kind of a
We're going to
go
back to that. We're going to go back to that.
Yep.
But what's funny is, now, Ryan, from a completely separate part of Illinois, not even related to...
Actually, not even in Illinois. This was in Wisconsin at the time. This is like 15 years ago, maybe, at a conference. I was playing drums, too, and you were running audio. And you and Wayne and Tom were all the first guys that taught me how to wrap cables and all that stuff. And
yeah, that was a blast, was the show at the time. That was Tom and Wayne, close buddies, all in the industry. That was our first show where we got kind of hired to rent gear and go up to this church retreat in Wisconsin Dells and put on a 3-day show. So that kind of blew up.
So for the listeners that don't know, a lot of the Master Effects employees, we are musicians. So, we were brought into the entertainment industry on different levels. But, so Ryan started working for Master Effects about 4 years ago. And in comes Carl Rupsis.
Yeah,
because he was picking up.
One day he's picking up fluid, and I hear a knock on the door. Open up. I'm like, I know you from somewhere. And then all the circles.
It took a minute, and I was like, oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool how this all came together. But I'd like to start with Carl Rupsis on, where your love for entertainment started. Kind of your childhood history with that, and then how before you got here, what were you doing?
I go all the way back, honestly, to Michael Jackson's Heal the World tour. I saw it, I don't know, on HBO or something. I just remember this globe coming out of this stage, and I was little. I don't remember any more details than that, but I think ever since then, I've always enjoyed the music and concerts and the whole music industry. I always wanted to see things move through the air. Even Broadway. I remember my mom bringing me to see Joseph, and I didn't know who the hell Donny Osmond was, but she was in love with him. But I just remember when I saw things move across the stage without actually anybody physically moving them, I was like, just kind of hooked me in. And then, it was in high school. I just kind of got thrown into audio, and I'm an audio geek here, and I try to be at least.
All right.
So audio is my background. Went to school for theater at Illinois State, so was doing that, but then I started picking up work back up in the city, and then I was also doing stagehand work for the Braden Auditorium and Redburn Arena. So I was actually ended up picking up more work than I was going to class, and then that kind of left school to work. And then was freelancing in the city for a handful of years, 10 years, started doing some installation work and stuff like that. Met my wife through a crazy story. With a gig actually ending early, a generator went bad, and a patron had a stroke, so they canceled the show.
Oh, geez.
So on a Friday night, me and my buddy Tom were driving back to the city with our truck full of gear, head to the shop, and didn't know what to do. And I was like, hey, this person was like, hey, I'm in the city. Do you want to get together? And I told her no at the time because I'm an audio engineer, and it's the summertime. There's no time. We're working. And so, we ended up actually I have a party down in Wicker Park. So that's how I met my wife. It's kind of crazy. Cool. But it wouldn't have happened if a gig hadn't gone bad. And as you know, gigs usually don't just stop halfway through. So it's
how that works out. Yeah.
It is. It's kind of crazy. So that turned to that. Met my wife. Ended up wanted to stay home. I did the stay-at-home dad thing because she's a teacher actually here. She's a band director. Did the stay-at-home dad thing, and then just slowly got sucked in because she's the band director here.
The thing is that when I first got to this school, I mean, it was a brand new high school back then. You know, the gear was okay. You know, it was all brand new, but they had no one managing anything.
No, it was bad.
And I just remember like cords ripped out and all this brand new stuff too. And it was kind of like no one knew how to use any of the gear. They would have you know, musicals where mics wouldn't work and lighting wasn't working. And I remember brand new lights just kind of tossed in the corner.
Yeah.
So when we were doing it was the Grease musical.
Yep.
Right. They needed you to come in just as like a freelance, right?
Yeah, they just hired me like, hey, the audio was so bad it was feeding back the entire opening night. Can you try to do something? And at that point, like, we had this really inadequate PA. The soundboard was up in a lighting booth, which we can show you later, but it's above everything. We have this rake seating auditorium, so like the kids can't hear. It was hard enough as a pro at that time who was mixing 7 days a week to hear. So like just trying to manage that amongst all, like you said, gear that wasn't quite hooked up right or wasn't quite, you know. So I got brought in for that, and then I got brought in for the following years just doing audio for the musicals. And then that's, like I said, it's kind of slowly turned into doing more shows. And then I got hired kind of as a temp worker to do the outside shows. But it was the same thing. I had started telling them I can't because I spend 5-6 hours just figuring out what the hell happened with everything before I can even get a show operating that I'm ready to operate. I mean, like, I don't want to put my name on it if it's crap. You know, I don't want to be here if it's not safe. So
you started freelancing, doing temp work, and then the next year that was my senior year, I believe. We did Footloose.
Yes,
and I'll never forget. I'll never forget it. We walk in and like we're the band, and like we're like, I don't want to say we're kind of. We're the cool kids in the music. You know what I mean? The band.
Yeah, you're seniors.
We're the band. We're the seniors. We're like, you know, and we're just like, all of us are like walking in together, and we look up, and there's just rigs of speakers. And we're like, what is going on in here? It was like tour quality speakers, a full-on soundboard desk, lighting, moving headlights, and we just kind of sank, and we're like, what happened? And then I see Carl in the corner, and he's just like, so tell us what happened. How did that all come about?
That was the next musical came up, and the directors came to me and were like, we'd like to hire you to do sound design for it and manage that. We realized that's really, at that time, I mean, it's still in my opinion one of the most important things. Like, lights can go down, and if I can still hear it, the show can still kind of go on. But anyway, so they brought me in, and I was like, well, I really can't work. Like, it's never going to happen. Like, just the game before feedback and everything with the pit, and like, we need to rent PA to make it happen. So they're like, what's it going to cost? So we worked it out, and then I worked it out with one of the sound co's that I did freelance work with, and we basically rented a PA. Being it was February and March, and in Chicago most everybody's kind of dead, I was able to pretty much pick what I wanted. And at that point, he had it was an XO Alpha rig. So we flew 2 or 3, it's not 3 wide, I think 2 wide by 4 deep. Nexo Alpha rig with subs on the floor, and just for me it was just I wanted to make sure everybody in the space could hear, and that was the biggest issue.
And I think for Footloose, like to have the
fun.
full kit mic'd, the drum kit was mic'd, and when I hit the kick, you could feel it in your heart, and like it was the first time as kids of high school. I remember what you did for that show, and it made everyone realize that this is so much more powerful and emotional than it was the last 3 years, and made people even more excited to come.
I mean, and that kind of leads up to what we've built and are continuing to build. I mean, just getting the kids excited. And that pro level gear and pro qualities, it's within the reach. It doesn't. I mean, we kind of have we have a saying, we don't like to do high school shows here, because nothing's more boring, and no offense to all the high schools out there, than going to like a high school musical where you're just going because your friends' daughters in it or whatever. We actually want, our biggest compliment was when we get people to repeatedly come to shows who have no connection to the school. There's no kids here. They come because the theater quality is up there. You know what I mean?
So you've changed the game for high school shows.
Yeah, I think with high schools, a lot of times either A, they have nobody, B, it's a teacher running it. So that, they're already swamped. Teachers are already well overwhelmed with what they have to do just in general, let alone, all right, let's manage a space as an extracurricular activity. And then there's a lot of bad salesmanship. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I feel like sometimes there's they get sold things they don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, and even that, I mean, I get it. You got to sell and you got to make your commissions and stuff like that. But you know, like if I can do it in house, we can make it affordable. Like, hey, we don't have to buy the $1,000. We can save money and buy the $8,000 or whatever. You know, whatever.
So they just I want to switch back.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you after that show, which was like a game-changing event for I believe Bolingbrook in general.
Yeah.
Does that when they decided, like, when did they decide we need a full-time auditorium
Oh man,
director?
it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't till it was probably another 10 years, to be honest, because I probably only did for that. It was. I'm bad with remembering all my dates, but it was at least 5 or 6 years where I was just the sound designer for the musical.
Okay.
And then I think when we got the sound shell, it was right around 2011. That was when I think 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. That's when they finally started we started getting pressure. Like, hey, we need someone to manage this.
Well, that would make sense because Master Effects was like 2010, 2011. Master Fog was started, and I believe that's around the same time.
Yeah, where they actually I was around and doing things, and like I got brought in for the musicals and was trying to help out where I could and help with some lighting and stuff like that. But it was really kind of just in for that spring. Like I said, then it started it became a temp position just for here. They needed someone to run the outside shows because we rent the space out to outside groups, mostly dance groups, but we've had some. I mean, we have Indian dance shows. We've had a bunch of Indian comedians from India flown in. Really? It's actually they packed the place, all 900 seats.
That's crazy.
And they flew them in. We were actually supposed to have one in April, and it got canceled. That was actually the first thing. That's when I knew things were going bad.
So you get the job as auditorium technical director, and now you're not only managing this school here, you're also managing...
So it started as a temp job here, and then they renovated our sister high school, Romeoville High School. They have actually a larger auditorium, a little bit different, but they completely gutted it and renovated it. And so when that was happening, that's when I kind of was brought in and kind of they brought me in at the beginning and like, hey, were you interested? And I was like, yeah, just keep me in the loop. And then all of a sudden they were building it, and so then they brought me in when things were happening. So I don't want to take credit for some of the design because there's a lot of things I would have definitely done differently. But yeah, so once that happened, and they're like, well, run this stage too, and I was like, we got to talk now because you were getting the a spouse alumni, because I actually graduated here too, the old building. But yeah, they were getting the discounts, and then I was finally like, all right, we got to make it a job. So that's when they finally created the position. So I manage this high school, Romeoville High Schools, both auditoriums are my primary, and then we have two junior high auditoriums, and then I do a bunch of other stuff with the electrician, I help the electricians. I always try to help the maintenance guys throughout the whole district. So
you got into this auditorium, and you obviously have a list, probably still very long, of what you want to do and what you want to budget for. What was some of the biggest, we need this immediately at these,
I mean, the biggest thing we did right away was the sound system. Okay. For the musical, knowing that's probably that is our biggest production. And we knew we were tired of renting. So that was the biggest thing we started saving up for right off the bat. When I first started, it was getting a hold of all the rigging. It was kind of a mess and a disaster. And that, I think, was part of the reason I got hired, because people started realizing there was thousands of pounds that were over people's heads that had no clue what was going on. So I got the rigging going, got that all taken care of. We had gotten the sound shell, which comes in a Wanger sound shell for all the orchestra and choir concerts. So it was really wrangling that. But the sound system was the biggest one, and we still saved for at least 4 or 5 more years.
Yeah. And what did you end up getting?
We ended up putting in a Nexo Geo S12 rig.
Okay.
So just something I've used before, covered the room well. And then we got an Allen & Heath. Their D-Live system, the S5000. Yes, the S5000 Surface 48-channel stage box. So, and that just gave us expansion room for days. Before, like I said, the kids had no audio gear. We brought in a gear a week before the musical, so the kids really had no opportunity to practice and learn or any of that opportunity. So this just completely opened that up.
And that goes to show, how many, I think, schools need improvements in this area.
Oh, it's huge.
Because, the industry for entertainment, no one's brought to light on sound, lighting, rigging. No one knows any of that. And then they get to college, and if they want to go to college for this stuff, they should know this stuff. Kind of like you take art class here and music class.
Yeah, there's basics you should definitely. Yeah. I mean, it helps you out. And talking with some college professors and admin officials and stuff like that, they do know like there's a wide variance of kids going into theater coming from. We have CAFA gymatoriums with spotlights held by hand to what we have here. Yeah. So they take that, but it always helps them. If you can get. No, you know how it is. You kind of get thrown to the wolves sometimes. Like, here you go. Like, and even picking up work, it was like my first gig was like, here's a stage at Downers Grove Heritage Fest. Have fun. Yeah. And I was like, what? I got to manage 14 bands in the next 8 hours? Yeah. Like, what? Like, you're nuts, Like,
and that's honestly how a lot of this stuff happens, with entertainment. You're kind of thrown into it. But
and I just want to make sure the kids are prepared, and like I said, they're within reach. We're the musical's self-funded, and that was a big thing. We got that way 15 years ago, where the only thing the school pays for is the director's stipends, but everything else, like everything we buy, costumes, rights, is all from ticket sales. So I mean, we lost our ass last year, but we had a big enough slush fund where we're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
So, but I like if you do it right. And you have someone who knows what's out there and what's available, it doesn't always have to cost $1 million. I feel like when I first started talking to admin, anytime I brought something up, they immediately saw $100,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be $100,000. We can probably do it in house for 12.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God. But that's what they are always used to, that sticker shock, because.
Yeah, because
I think with schools, and I see that like when you go into the bidding, I don't know if that actually helps the price, but I mean, I get the point, but I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know what.
So any high schools listening or schools districts, you need an auditorium technical director.
You really do. I mean, I think it helps out.
It's going to save you money.
It'll save you money in the end.
Your shows are going to be better, much better.
And it prepares kids.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, we didn't have one at my high school, so it was a lot of high schoolers turning knobs.
And then that's how ours. I mean, I remember taking 2 wires in high school and going, all right, let's get that. And then, this was shorted out, but we got the E-tape just right. Or, I remember one show, Tom, in high school, we did some Battle of the Bands, and we rented some gear from that music shop down in Lyle, or forget, Modern Music.
Ryan loves
Shout out Modern Music.
Yeah,
Modern Music.
I mean, this was 1996 or whatever. But Tom sat in the back. We were mixing, Battle of the Bands or whatever, and he was holding the jack in the back of the sub, just like, all right, if we could just hold it here, the sub will work. And I just remember sitting there. But I mean, that's part of it. Like, that was part of how we learned. So I was like, I don't want to take that away from them, because I want the kids still to know how to troubleshoot, but I should do it safely and not do it correctly. It shouldn't be wires that are going bad that causes an issue. It should be like, how do we make this happen? And I always preach, like, it's a big sandbox. If we can do it safely, we can have the time, and we can afford it. Like, your dreams are our limit, really.
So talk about the different kind of branches of this space. So you have your lighting crew, that like, how do they get into, like, how do you go, hey, what do you guys like to do? How do they get into this stuff?
I mean, that's kind of, we've been playing around. Some schools kind of will delegate, like, everybody needs to try a little bit of everything. We've tried a couple different things. Right now, I kind of leave it up to the kids. Like, we have here, we have crew chiefs for the bigger shows. We'll do interviews where they actually interview for that position, and then we'll basically, all right, we'll have lighting is going to meet at this such and such a time. If you want to be part of that crew, come meet then. And if you can be multiple crews, we kind of divide that up so there's not too much overlap, and then we're not all over each other too as well. So I mean, it's really kind of, if you're interested, come and help out. And the big shows kind of lead into, like, all right, once I realize who's really interested, then I'll just put out a call on their call board, like, hey, we got such and such show, which may be a 1-night, 3-hour show, and then I'll get kids to show up, and that's really how to learn. It's all low.
Did you notice, is there anyone that comes to mind, or a couple, some students that come to mind that have you seen grew interest in this and are pursuing it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure. I have at least a half a dozen. The 2 that pop to mind are my most recent. Just because it was my first audio student who got a scholarship. Morgan Dudark is at DePaul University, the theater school there. She got a good scholarship for audio, so that was really was really cool for us, just because it was the first audio one. And then Sebastian's also at DePaul on a really large scholarship for lighting, and he's going into his senior year. So and then we have a couple other, Missouri, Milliken. stuff like that. So I
mean,
think
without you,
they wouldn't, because we don't have.
Stuff.
I mean, we don't have any theater class. We have one theater class, and it's kind of an all-encompassing theater arts. So that's something our directors and ourselves are trying to grow, because there's a lot of schools that have full-fledged Stagecraft 1, Stagecraft 2 classes, and they get a lot of stuff done during the day, which is where we'd like to be. But everything right now is just after school, and it's what I can teach, and I'm not a teacher by any stretch of the imagination, so it's just kind of.
I think you are.
Oh, I guess I mean, everybody says that. Carl, you are a teacher.
You are a teacher.
I am not a certified board of education teacher.
But in real world troubleshooting, you are giving these students literally a real world experience that they have no idea that they might be using.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'll thank you.
I
am.
It's awesome. I mean, it's super cool.
Definitely taught me some things. So you are a mentor and you're a leader for a lot of these kids. Who was that person for you growing up that kind of pushed you in the right direction?
My first director, Miss Breiniger, I think she just let us. It was kind of the same thing. It was high school, and she was the director, and kind of just let us in. I remember, like, we were always kind of scared of her because she was kind of one of the mean teachers. But you really kind of had to know, you got to know her. And I remember there was a Saturday, me and Wayne came in, and we were focusing lights, and we had.
Who's Wayne?
Wayne Quiet is a good, my best friend, besides my wife, my best friend. We graduated from BHS 2000 together. He is now a lighting engineer. He's been out on tour with, I can name names, but for days. He works for Upstaging now, or used to before the pandemic. Worked for a bunch of companies out of. But yeah, big touring guy, close friend of mine. But yeah. We built our own harness, and I lowered him down with rope to focus Auditorium lights that we couldn't reach, and we couldn't get the ladders. And it was just me and him in the auditorium. And don't do this at home, kids, please. But I remember Miss Briner walking in, looking at us, like kind of freaked out, calmed down, was like, "Thank you, guys," and then walked out. Because she knew we were working. That was like when we realized, like, she was a human. Because you always get that the teacher, like, you don't think they're human, like they're just your teacher. And I think that was the moment where, like, all right, like, we're doing good things, albeit probably not safely at the time, but like we were there working, and she always, like, just go to town and do what you want. I mean, I rigged a surround sound system up in the high school, the old high school, just to have seagulls flying around people's heads, and it was just.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it was just home receivers at the time, and aux matrices, and just trying to self-mix, left, rear, and stuff like that. So it was probably her that got me really going. And then it was my parents, just always like, here's a video camera, run around with the old video camera. We used to put on little concerts in the garage where all our neighbors would do dance to music, and I would set up all the lights, and I would just any lamp, any flashlight I could get, and duct taped it to anything, like, it was just kind of crazy. So I don't know if there was any like Miss Breiniger, my parents. Yeah, it's really probably it, and just having the opportunity to just do it and go to town. Probably, I think. Well, and you know what?
One of them, and your family.
It takes a village,
and you know what? I'm going to change it now that I've thought about it. The person who got me into theater is probably Jackie Anderson, a friend of mine. Graduated the same. She was a stage manager at Second City for a little while, and did some front office stuff. Stage managed a bunch of places, but she actually handed me. I remember this distinctly now. It was my sophomore year, and I was kind of always, like I said, I had an interest, but I didn't know how to get into the theater nerd group or the choir nerd. You know what I mean? I was a jock at the time. I'm still kind of a jock.
Carl.
I'm one of them, man. I'm a nerd all day long. But I was a football player and a baseball player, but I always had interest. And she handed me a cassette of Rent, the musical.
Okay.
Which was like, if anybody's familiar, it's more upbeat. It's like the first, like, I always had a musical, and like, flu, and people dance around. But this was like grungy, had an edge, there's a rock beat to it. And I fell in love with it then. And she's like, come on. And she pulled me into, was it How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying? And she was like, and I started helping build the set for that. And then I auditioned. She's like, audition for choir. And I'm like, no, come on. so I just did, and it wasn't her, but it was another girl I was probably, interested in. So I was like, I'll try out for choir. And then I ended up in Magical Sunrise and like all the
Same
top choir.
here.
It was like, and it was probably because I had a deeper voice and was a guy and was somewhat interested in choir. So like, here you go,
Yeah.
But that was probably the turning point when I got into, like, without that moment of, hey, listen to this, hey, come, I probably would have been an architect playing sports somewhere.
I mean, the choir thing, everyone makes fun of it, but you learn a lot with music in choir.
Oh, it's
like me being a musician. Like I remember, I wanted to take any class I could that would get me better at harmony or learning how to,
And I didn't appreciate it then at the time because I didn't really my family wasn't really musical. Like in terms of having any background, they had a little bit, but it was never really pushed. And I remember my mom going, I was like, I'm in Sunrise. What? Yeah, I just made the top choir. She had no clue. I auditioned, nothing. And so it was that, it was.
Well, that's awesome.
But yeah, I probably wish I would have done a little bit more because there's a lot of, and like you said, a lot of engineers, a lot of people in our industry are really musicians at heart. So, but it definitely helps out having at least a little bit of musical background.
So now going to the, you talked about the sound here at Bolingbrook and Romeoville. What did you do differently with all the lighting?
Well, the lighting system at BHS was actually pretty well designed. I mean, we have tons. We have like 180 fixtures, all ETC, all LECOs and stuff like that. So I got 192 dimmer channels. So it was actually pretty well done here at a data network. Now, RHS, it's brand new. It's all color source LED, but they didn't put in a data network. They only gave me 2 universes, one of which is most of my relays. So it was like I said earlier, I got kind of brought in late, and it was really kind of frustrating to try to get them to change anything or like, hey, why don't we have a data network? It's 2014 or 12 or whatever the heck it was at the time. Like, so there was things like that. So yeah, I mean, they're kind of set. I wish they would have built a new catwalk for me. But there were some things that just budget cuts. So it was like just trying to make, like any theater, make do with what you have.
Well, I think the best thing about you is like, we'll get a call and it'll be like, Vince, I want to do Flames. I want to do Flames for the musical coming up. I mean, I'm like, wait, okay. Well, I mean, we can make that happen. You just think way outside the box, and that's what I love about you. I mean, and like you think of the whatever's going to capture that audience, and even if it's just a high school show, you're thinking of Flames, confetti, you're thinking of everything.
The whole 9 yards.
I love it.
Well, and it goes back to the kids. Let them be we try to get them to be more of the designers now. Like, we can design shows. I can mix a show. Like, I know that. I'm not here to make my resume better. But yeah, like, think out, what do you want to do? I mean, we've flown people. For Little Mermaid, we had people flying through the air, and honestly, everybody doing all the work was kids. Like, there wasn't a single adult doing any of the safe work. I mean, I did a pre-show inspection, but that was it. The kids all flew each other, and it was totally safe and totally awesome. And yeah, like you said, like, we want to put a turntable, or we want it for Jekyll and Hyde. I wanted to control flames out of the beakers and stuff like that, and we just talked. It was probably not safe at the time, and or the same thing. We'll dream big, and then we kind of chip away at what's affordable, what we can do safely, and what we can do in the time.
And what is some of your favorite, as far as from your position here, your favorite shows you've done?
Jekyll and Hyde is probably my favorite so far. I just think it was, it was awesome. There was a lot more I wanted to do. I actually couldn't walk for that show. I ended up having back surgery a week after the show closed. So I spent most of my show like laying sideways, directing and pointing. But I think it was cool because I couldn't do so much. The kids did. I mean, they all stepped up knowing. And I mean, we got nominated as one of the best set designs in the state that year, which was kind of a cool event to go to. And it was just, we had a good cast, the whole 9 yards. I mean, there's little bits, we keep getting better every year. Like, Little Mermaid was fun because we got to fly people. Like Sister Act, we did projection in another show, which I learned that we need to invest a lot more if we're going to make it look better. So, because it was all, and the same thing. And now it opens up a whole nother can of worms. I'm probably going to pick your brain, for the musical coming up. We're going to film it all. But we don't want to do a static shot in the audience. So it's like now we're thinking about, all right, we're thinking about doing a cable cam. We're trying to, like a boom arm. Like we want to do it right. Like we're going to get a gimbal so we can go through the audience with or through the dancers. And so like we don't want to do a high school show. So, and I tell the kids with who we know, it's like if you see it, we can either do it, or if you want to know how we do it, I probably can find the person who did it. Within a couple phone calls, or if you want to do it and we can afford it, let's. We want to fly Santa in, from over the audience. We'll probably make it happen in 10 years.
Yeah.
We want to do projection on it. I mean, we just dream, and then, like I said, knowing what we can do and having, just a budget and just we build that up. But we also know we're not dumb. We don't overspend. We're just smart with our money. So
it's awesome.
Yeah. It's a big sandbox. Our dream and our money is the limit. So
I hear you.
So you teach a lot of people here about lighting, about sound, productions, everything like that. What is something that students have maybe taught you along the way?
A lot, I think. I always go to the kids who've gone into college. I keep in touch with them because I'm always trying to learn more in that. So it's always hey, what are you learning? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm always scared I'm going to send someone out with bad knowledge because, like I said, back to we're so small. My biggest fear is oh, yeah, Carl taught me this. Well, don't trust that Carl guy from Bolingbrook because he sends out people who, do stupid stuff, and that's, I always tell the kids, safety's huge. But I think that working with different kids, I have some kids who will work super hard and then some kids who try to work there's just all these different levels of what they can comprehend. I have some kids who can program really well. I have some kids that would just completely kill them. So there's just a varying degree of kids who are interested, what their talent and skill levels are. I have some kids who don't even, like you said, don't know what they like. They just, this looks cool. So it's all right, let's work them around, and figure out what they're good at or what they're not good at. And a lot of kids, I'll have maybe one or two kids who actually go into theater.
Yeah.
A lot of other kids are just going to go on. It was just something fun they did. So I think it's just learning just that there's a whole big variety of kids and the way they learn is different. I can't just speak one way and expect them to grasp that. Mm-hmm. It's I got to try to teach them in a couple different ways, or all right, we're going to fly this down and actually do it by hand instead of just talking about it.
Yeah.
Where some people don't get that and need me to draw it out and signal flow. All right, I got to draw it out. So that's the biggest thing, and I think that's just learning to be a teacher. Is coming from just unloading a truck, not talking to my crew all day because we can just load a show and run a show without speaking, and a couple grunts and a wink here and there, or throw a bad battery at someone, and our show's running. But here it's all right, just keep them interested and let them know, sometimes it's not for them too.
Yeah.
All right, are you really having a good time? Then don't feel like you have to be there. Right. I tell it to my athletes too, because I coach. I'm a weird kid, but I coach football too. So I'll have football players this just may not be your sport. And I'm not mad at you about it, but
it's okay.
You gotta find what you like.
They're figuring it out.
Totally. I think that's. What have I learned, man? You did get deep on me on that one.
Ryan with the deep questions.
He's
always throwing a loop. Wait, what?
I assume it's a pretty big adjustment going from the tour side of things where your entire crew, seasoned professionals, right? The guys running lighting know what they're doing. They've been doing it. You can trust them and not really have to worry about that job getting done. And then coming here and having to think about, is this person doing it the right way?
There's a lot of following up. Where normally, like you said, it just gets done. The case is closed. Things are wrapped up, at least close to what you want. But here, there's a lot of, at the end of the day, all right, I'm going to go, all right, all my mic cables are hung up properly in the right spots. And that's the same thing, just kind of teaching the kids that and the expectations. And that gets passed down to a lot of the times. Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the things I have to be careful on what gets passed down. Because I've gone 2, maybe a couple of years where I have a good lighting crew and I know things get focused right, but then I see them why are you doing that? Well, Jimmy just told me to do it. Okay, no, all right, we need to have another meeting and just get together and kind of just refresh on what the expectations are. I don't remember where I was going with that one.
I think I know what I think I know what they've taught you, and it's probably patience.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I have more patience for the kids than I do for the adults. So, but at the same time, teachers, what they do is crazy. So the amount of what they have to,
especially 2020,
dude.
Oh man,
yeah.
So, well, that's great.
Do you ever miss the touring side of
yes.
things?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if I miss like touring and being gone, and even like the pandemic kind of everybody kind of slowed down, and I kind of appreciated being home with the family more. But yeah, it's always like I will kill to mix outside right now. Just give me a PA outside with no walls and just my hand on a DCA section. Just let's go to town. So yeah, I do miss that, but like it's always greener on the other. Like I right now, I have a job. Like I'm happy. There's at least some work. It's all maintenance right now and some streaming stuff, but like. Yeah, I always know, like, I'm inside. I don't have to worry about the rain. Like there's a lot of things, like, yes and no, like, but when I get that phone call from a kid, like, hey, I get that text message, here's my scholarship offer, and like, dude, like, it's almost like having, like, one of my own kids. Like, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
So, and it's super cool. So
what's the future look like for this position for you? Like, what do you have planned in your head?
Well, we're gonna keep, honestly, just keep modernizing, renovating I got a lot of infrastructure things in mind for the like lighting. We need a new lighting board here. Want to get all over to either ArtNet or SACN type of stuff for lighting control.
What lighting console are you looking at?
Right now we got a Camsys MQ80 right now. I have an ETC Ion at the other school. Being an audio guy that knows way too much about lights than I ever want to admit to any of my audio colleagues, I think we're going to go back to an ETC here because that's what their kids are seeing a lot in college.
Okay.
So I want to prep them for that. And then also all the syntax and stuff like that. In my mind, I'm tired of having to learn or keep two different lighting syntaxes in my head.
Yeah. So
I was like, let's streamline it. We'll go all ETC. So we're looking at either an Ion or if we can afford it, a Geo at 5, if that's how you say it. Once again, I just need we are going to pixel map a 25-foot record for our last musical. I was at like 10 universes. So it was like super cool stuff, but it's like, all right, I need to make sure, like, I don't want to buy anything that limits us.
Yeah. And
that's the problem I have in RHS is we installed things that I couldn't expand on. I have an M32. Well, I need more than 32 channels for a musical now. I have 28 channels of just wireless these days, or just lavs, let alone the pit. So we'd really kind of got shoehorned in there. So that's the biggest thing is expanding that at RHS. Here, we just got our pit cover. Our school, and our administration's been awesome, just helping us out. The pit cover was huge. It gave us a lot more space out front. The shell was a big thing that my wife and the mayor actually was in on. They raised like $120,000 in less than a year. Wow. And put that together. So, and then the big thing here, lighting. We'd like to upgrade to all LED. The ETC's got that new forward fixture cap that we're going to look into and see how it works and see how we like it. So that's the thing too. We try to try things like going back to, I don't want to waste money. I have to be a good, what's the word I'm thinking of? Just I have to it's tax money. I'm playing with tax money. So I try to not to like I want good gear, but I also I want to drive the BMW, but we don't need the Ferrari, but I also don't want the moped. You know what I mean? So and knowing that the gear is going to last. I want to install stuff that when I do, I'm assuming I'll probably be here a while, that when I do retire that it lives me. And the biggest thing for me, and when I first got hired, was I had an assistant principal who said they were scared to use the auditorium. And this goes back to what you said, things not always working. So I always, whenever I design system and all around the school district now, it's how can I make sure it works all the time? Is simple for a principal or a teacher to walk up, grab a microphone, and it just works, on those simple stuff. And then they now know, hey, the bigger stuff, just give me a call, and I'm glad. But I don't like when people look bad. If you're doing a presentation and you crap's blowing up all around you, you're not focused on what you're doing. So that's kind of how I look at it. Kids, teachers, all of that. They should be able to walk into a space, feel comfortable, and allowed to do their job, whether it's entertaining or informing or whatever it may be.
We need more people like you, Carl.
I'm a weird one.
No, you're not.
Nothing wrong with weird ones.
I love it.
We're all a little weird too.
I love it. So sometimes I wish I had 8 more hours in a day.
I know, same here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you taking some time to talk about it.
I hope there's something good out of it.
We're gonna go walk around and look at some of the improvements you did.
Cool.
We appreciate you as always. Thank you very much. And,
you're welcome.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Catch you on the flip side.
That's the Crip side.
The Crip side?
Isn't that?
It's November now,
I
though,
should
isn't
stop.
it? Are we out of the haunting season?
I'm going to stop talking now. We're going to end the show.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.